So it's been a busy year so far in the Mash studio. We've been working tirelessly to get through all of this year's releases. Now, one of the first laptops we reviewed this year was the Blade 16, a completely fresh design from Razer, bringing it back to the iconic slim and light Blade from the chunkier 16-inch models from 2023 and 2024. And this laptop really does feel incredible, with its solid milled aluminium chassis and great fit and finish, a light design and solid battery life. This really is a gaming laptop that you can take everywhere with you. And talking of taking it everywhere with you, make sure you get a decent power adapter from today's sponsors, UGreen. More on them later. Though this slim new design has introduced the problems of thermal limitations with the more powerful graphics cards such as the 5080 and the 5090. Now, the Blade 16 we reviewed was capped at 160 watts, though we most regularly saw it sitting at about 150 watts on our system. So with that in mind, I've bought the 5070 Ti version to see if this is the sweet spot if you want a Blade 16 this year. I also want to just quickly mention that we have also bought a few other 6-inch laptops with the 5070 Ti. So there will be a lot of 6-inch love on the channel this month, so please consider subscribing if you're not already. Now, before we start testing this laptop out, I want to talk about Razer's pricing and spec strategy, and it's not pretty. Razer has a habit of trying to force you into overspending, and that's really evident in the Blade 14 and Blade 16 this year. Want the base spec at that great price? Sure, but here's 16GB of soldered on RAM to go with your 8GB Nvidia graphics card. Talk about planned obsolescence. Fortunately, every model other than the RTX 5060 gets at least 32GB of fast system RAM, which in my opinion should be the bare minimum for a laptop costing over $2,000 in 2025. Next, let's talk about CPUs, and the model we reviewed in the 5090 also came with the Ryzen HX 370. Now, this chip is a little old now, but it's very power efficient, so I don't blame Razer for this choice. It uses half the wattage of the Intel Core Ultra 275HX for about 30% less performance, and in all honesty, most games are more GPU bound anyway. But here's the kicker: if you buy anything but the 5090 model for an insane $4,500, you get the lowly AI 365 chip. This chip loses 2 Zen 5C cores, so has slightly less multi-core scores in benchmarks. In reality, looking at the two chips in each of the Razer blades, there isn't a massive amount of lost performance going to that AI 365 chip, so I can live with it. But Razer, how much money did you save cheaping out here? These aren't bargain basement laptops. Why not give all the models the HX 370 like Asus do on their range? Fortunately, all the ports and features remain the same no matter which model you buy, meaning you still get that beautiful OLED display, the new keyboard with dual lighting, Windows Hello, and the fast soldered on RAM. So dropping down to the 5070 Ti to save $1,500 seems like a sensible option to me. This thinner light chassis can actually cope with the 140W TGP that Nvidia have enforced on the 5070 Ti, and 12GB of GDDR7 is actually future-proofing us for a while, and in my testing, the 5070 Ti is not far off a 4080, which was my previous generation go-to graphics card. Now, comparing a couple of benchmarks, and the 5070 Ti gives us some solid results compared to the much more expensive 5090. Now, yes, the 5090 is better, but is it $1,500 better? Let me know your thoughts. Now, obviously, the 5090 does have 24GB of GDDR7, and the 5080 has 16GB of GDDR7. So they may be the better option if you're using this as a professional work and gaming laptop. But remember, Razer have limited these cards to 160 watts because of this slim chassis. And the AMD chip is a fair bit slower than the Intel 275HX. So if you do need that more power, I think there are better alternatives available. But if you are looking at thin and lights, then this is a great compromise, as even the Asus G16, which has the Intel chip, is thermally constrained. Review of that model coming out soon. So now we've run through these benchmarks, how does it game? Well, really well, incredibly well actually. I really think the 5070 Ti is this year's sweet spot for cost performance, and the AI 365 does a good job keeping that GPU fed, even though it's not a powerhouse like the watt-guzzling 275HX. Now, a great feature of this 5070 Ti Razer Blade 16 over the top-spec 5090 version is that it is a little bit quieter. Now, looking at the different profiles, the silent profile, we're looking at about 50 watts on that GPU and 35 watts on the CPU, and that comes in at 41 decibels. Then as we move up to the balanced mode, we're getting up to 90 watts on the GPU, 45 watts on that AI365 at only 47 decibels. Then when we move to the final performance mode, we're getting up to 140 watts on that GPU and 45 watts on the CPU for 53 decibels. Now that performance 53 decibels is very similar to the 5090, but the great news is that the silent and the balance are quieter than that higher end 5090 model. And that's mostly because that 5070 Ti draws slightly less watts and runs slightly cooler than the 5090 version. Now with regards to the palm rest temperatures and the keyboard temperatures, just like the 5090 version, it does a very good job keeping the palm rest and the keyboard at a reasonable temperature. There was a warm spot on the sort of centre right of the keyboard at about 44 degrees, but the rest of it was all in the 30s, which meant it was very cool to the touch and you can leave your palm on the palm rest. And one of the biggest positives this year with the Blade 16 and its use of the Ryzen processors is the battery life. I've managed some fantastic battery runtimes in light use, meaning this 16-inch gaming laptop can make an excellent mobile device, and that cannot be said for any of the Intel 275HX laptops that we've actually reviewed so far this year. The problem with most Intel laptops has always been the battery life, and although the new Core Ultra processors are more efficient, we still haven't tested this year's 275HX laptops with battery life to match these Ryzen laptops yet. And something that's often overlooked, but in my opinion a really important feature, is power delivery and the implementation on a laptop, especially with a laptop designed for mobility like this Blade 16. With one cable from my 4K PD monitor, I can charge this laptop and have all my peripherals connected through the display. Now for me, this is perfect, as I have a 4K display at work on my desk, and I can do all my daily workflow without ever needing my large 280 watt charger. And UGreen have kindly sent me over two of their products for the new retractable series, perfect for use with this blade. A 65 watt wall plug and a 20,000 milliamp 165 watt Nexode power bank. Both devices retract the cables into the body, saving the hassle of losing cables and turning your bag into a tangled bird's nest. First, this GAN charger plugs straight into the wall and provides 65 watts of power and can charge 3 devices at once, 2 USB-Cs and a USB-A port. And then there's this 20,165 watt power bank. This is airline friendly, can also charge 3 devices at once, up to a maximum of 165 watts, so it can easily power this Razer blade with its 100 watts of power delivery. It can also charge a MacBook Pro from 0 to 54% in just 30 minutes, and the device has a handy display showing real-time power status. Both these devices are ideal for travel or work, saving the need to transport heavy PSUs in your bag. Check out the links in the description down below and enjoy 30% off the UGreen Nexode retractable power bank and charger. Now PD can be a complete hit and miss with manufacturers, as although a lot of these laptops are PD enabled, the way they distribute the power is often suboptimal. Now Razer do seem to tune their laptops really well for power delivery. The Blade 16 does limit the CPU performance, so it is a little more sluggish on power delivery than mains, but it does allow up to 60 watts to the graphics card. This means I can even game or complete 3D projects over the USB-C. And there was almost no difference in performance between the 5070 Ti model and the 5090 model, as both are limited to that smaller wattage. The Alienwares and Legions that I've tested this year, although allowing 100 watt PD, seem to prioritise CPU over GPU power, meaning that although you can use the laptop for work, don't even try gaming over PD, especially with the Alienwares, it's just embarrassing. Before we move to the conclusion, I want to talk about software a little, as all of this year's Blades does come with the new Synapse 4, and although quite a bulky piece of software, I've actually really enjoyed it so far, and it has some great improvements over Synapse 3. The new tab-based interface makes it clear when you have a lot of Razer peripherals attached. The interface is well laid out, so it's easy to select your profile, monitor settings, lighting, macros, and the new performance stats are quite handy. I just wish it was a little bit faster to load, especially when you first boot the laptop up. So overall, my views on this Blade 16 haven't really changed since my initial review. I think this is a really sleek laptop with decent battery life, and it makes a great everyday laptop that you can actually game with. Now there are better pure gaming laptops out there and better pure productivity laptops, but for the jack of all trades, I'm really liking this one. I do feel like the 5070 Ti is the sweet spot for the model though, and the 5060 and 5070 just shouldn't exist in £2,000+ machines, and the 5080 and 5090 are power limited, so if you need those GPU powers, I would push up to the Blade 18 or maybe a Legion Pro 7 or an Area 51. So that's my long-term review of the Blade 16. As always, I'd love to know your thoughts on this laptop. And lastly, Thank you for watching.